Electricast. Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we're talking with Robin Olson. Robin is a coach, consultant, and thriving mountain enthusiast who cultivates mindfulness, resilience, and authentic living through her own profound journey of working through major life events and professional expertise. After her younger sister died in an accident in 2007, Robin felt there was a message for her to start living a life she wanted. Living according to everyone else's expectations of what a successful life looks like became smothering and wholly unfulfilling to Robin. She knew something needed to change and that only she could be that something. Robin forged ahead through this scary train of change and 17 years later is living her dreams. By drawing on her own personal journey through multiple losses, including death, divorce, and leaving her 30-plus year accounting career, Robin coaches clients toward more clarity, self-awareness, and personal growth by blending mindfulness practices, meditation, and grief processing techniques. Robin, I am thrilled to have you on the show today, so welcome.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you so much. And I am honored and thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy that you're here. I would love to start first by rewinding a bit and have you take us back to the earlier part of your journey before the work you're doing now and to share what life looked like then and what led you to make such a bold shift and begin building a life that truly aligned with who you are.
Wow, I'd love to share that. Yeah, so my life was married to an Air Force officer who had served in Iraq in 2004. And, from the outside, we just had this perfect life. We had a great house. We had 2 dogs, 2 cars, a kid, a daughter. And it looked great. However, I, on the inside, was miserable. He had a drinking problem, which he would not change, and I was trying to keep up appearances, both with myself, friends, and definitely my family. I never let them know anything was going on. And then in 2007, my mom had called and said, Robin, your sister's been in an accident, and she has a traumatic brain injury. And this is my younger sister who, as a child, survived leukemia and a coma from meningitis. She was disabled around the age of 4 or 5 from that coma. And so at 7, my life really changed dramatically there. And that was where I learned how to read people and live as a survival mechanism by other people's expectations, right? And so I attribute my ability to get through my marriage to that point. Having had those survival skills as a child, I was using those now in my marriage. But when Cheryl, my sister, had her accident, everybody was like, why Cheryl? Why Cheryl? And I immediately knew she was a teaching soul. She was here to teach me. And what can I learn from that? And it was a huge wake-up call to say, hey, Robin, you need to do what you are supposed to and called to do in this lifetime. And being unhappy, I don't believe is what we're supposed to do in this lifetime, right? And I was deeply unhappy in my marriage. I just didn't know how to make that change. And so I had a talk with my husband and we tried to work things out for the next year and it didn't work. And so I asked for a divorce in 2009. Well, in 2009, his alcohol habit, he stopped drinking right away. I mean, in an effort to save our marriage. What ended up happening was he had a psychotic break. And so my daughter and I, we were now found ourselves potentially homeless. We've lost our security of our financial person, our safety in all of this turmoil. And I relied on my parents, and thankfully, they were able to help out. We started our new life in a town right close to where all of this happened and started over. I went back to accounting. I had to start over, build my life again, and raise my daughter at the same time. So, in one of those things, when things change, we try to go back to who we were to begin with, right? And I did that. When the divorce started, I called everybody I knew because I was trying to recapture who I was. But you can't do that. Here I am 20 years later, I've got a child and I've got to move forward and figure out who I am now. Well, a couple of years after the divorce, my father became ill and died within 6 to 8 weeks of being diagnosed with cancer. And I was able to be there and walk through that with him. And that was such a sacred time in his life and an experience to get that close with someone, with my father, who I had been close with altogether. And then fast forward a few more years, my mother passed away, and I had to be her advocate, and I was able to be with her at the end of her life. So this caregiving, end of life work really started to come out there. And I knew somewhere I had to make a change because anxiety was getting to me. The depression of losing now my immediate family is gone. So I would have these swings from depression and anxiety. And I started wondering, how am I going to get through this? What am I going to do? Right? Because I still have my daughter and, they're sponges. They see what we do as parents and pick up on that. Well, I found meditation. I found meditation and mindfulness. And that was my first introduction to coaching. I have a bachelor's in teaching, so I've taught alongside of the accounting career. And I remember a mom saying to me years and years ago, you should become a coach. And that stuck with me. So when I started meditating and doing mindfulness, I found the mindfulness coaching school and I got into coaching there. And working with women, particularly who are going through these major life transitions to help slow things down, which kind of seems counterintuitive when you're changing, right? But to slow things down, take note of what's going on inside of you, because that's what I did. I want to help share the process that I've used with other women to get through those transitions, get out of the stuckness, and get on with the last half of their life. And I also found that grief processing was a huge part of that. So meditation and mindfulness and grief processing are like two of the main things that I focus on in my coaching. We don't even know we're grieving a lot of the time either, but we really do. And women carry a lot of that as we go through and live our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your story because, again, I feel like it kind of sets us up to get to know one another when we can be open about where we came from, because then that can draw people closer together, because then we can say, oh, we can not necessarily have shared experiences, but we are human, and it brings us closer together to understand, like, oh, this is her human experience and I can be a part of that by her sharing it with me. And so I love that you did that. Now, you shared with me that a big part of your work centers on the idea that we have to be the thing that changes in our lives, and that this often involves processing non-death losses. So can you share what that means to you and why this has become such a central theme in the way you support others?
Yes, thank you for asking me that and wanting me to share. Yes, when I was married, and again, my husband was an alcoholic, there was a time when I would pray for nothing to happen to him, right? Because he would unfortunately drive to get more alcohol occasionally, and I would just say, "Okay, please, nothing happen to him." We're married, our daughter. I didn't want anything to happen. Well, as time went on and I would try to work with him and get him help, he wouldn't change. And so I switched, and this may sound harsh, but I was like, "Please, something happened to him to wake him up," right? I don't know what that might be, but is it an accident? Is it an illness? Please wake him up so he'll stop drinking. And then when that didn't work, the thought came to me, "Hey, wait a minute. I'm the thing that has to happen. I'm the thing that has to happen to him and to me to make changes. I can't wait for something outside of me to dictate how this is going to go." And that's how that concept came about. I had to be the thing that changed in my life. And again, having my sister die was a catalyst in that too, going, okay, wake up call. I've got to do some work inside and figure out what I want out of my life, where I want to go with my marriage or not go with it. And I think that's important for women in any stage of their life to realize that we have the power within us to make those changes. We can't expect someone else to do the work for us or to change so that we can exist in our environment and our world. We have to be the thing that promotes ourselves and be who we want to be. Go after the job that you want, go after the relationship that you want, make those life changes that bring about the joy, and it will bring about sorrow too, but you've made those changes, you've made those choices. Our choices are so powerful and they have a ripple effect in our life that things that we've done many, many years ago will it can and sometimes do come back in a good way, not so good way, but we have the choice of how to respond, and no one can do that for us. And so that is a very much a central part of my coaching, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's important when we look at life as not always, like as you were saying, like the death of a loved one, whether it's your parents, a sibling, someone that's close to you. Yes, those are life-changing moments, but there's changes that happen in our lives which we can feel like that's the death of that. For example, even like in a career, you might change a career. One of the things I can say just personally, and it just made me think of it right now, was I never had children. And we had decided, when we first got married, we got married in our early 30s, and we had given ourselves time to think about, do we want to have children? How is this going to affect the lifestyle that we're living and that we've chosen to live? And one of the things that we talked about was that, because we wanted to live in the warm weather areas, we came in from Canada, we moved down from Toronto, and we moved down to Florida for the first part of our marriage for the first 12 years. And we realized that we want to be able to travel around. And I felt particularly, and this was really a strong emotion for me, was that I didn't really want to have to be dragging, as for me, bringing my children from place to place to place just because I wanted to go and live in different places, because I know how important it is for those early years, especially when you're forming relationships and learning how to do that. And so for me, the loss, I guess the non-death loss for me was when I went through menopause and came out the other side, like postmenopausal, and realized that I no longer can have children. And so that was a wake up call for me in a way. I was a little bit sad at first because I thought, the what if, what would have happened? Like, what our child had been like, our children would have been like. And so that's a non death loss for me to reflect back on, right? So I love that you talk about that, because it's not just about the actual physical death of a person, or even, people, for me, for babies are part of my family. So even like your pet, that's one side of it. But I love that you talk about other things that affect us, like the death of your marriage. That's a non-death loss. So, the death of a relationship, as I was saying, for me, not being able to bear children. Like, even if I'd wanted to, if I changed my mind, I couldn't do it. So I love that you talk about that. That's a new way for me to look at at the way of how loss is, right? So I love that you brought that up.
Right. Yeah. When you think about loss and grief, death, it comes to mind, and that's normal, right? It's visible. And what we're talking about here are non-visible losses. And, talking about not being able to have a child, that's an identity that you had and then it shifted. And so now it's a new identity, right? And you can't go back. Yeah. In loss of relationships and marriage, identity is a huge loss for women, loss of dreams, loss of social status. And certainly when I was married, he was an Air Force officer, and there's a certain status with that. When the marriage failed, the loss of that identity for myself. And these losses are harder to name, and they're harder to validate, and they're often harder to support. And we don't realize that the emotions we're feeling come from those types of things. Often when I coach, I have people do a timeline of major changes in their life. And it's in trying to leave death out of it and just say, well, even going to college, moving away from home, that's a loss. You're losing that family support. If that's a path you chose, you're moving out of the home you grew up in into your own. There's a change there, and that's happening for you. It's happening for the parents. That is a type of loss. So any major event in your life, or any event in your life that really just had an emotional impact on you, because that is one of the definitions of grief. It's that attachment and the emotional impact, and then it's gone. That familiar pattern, the habits that you had, it's gone now. One of the things that I realized after I moved to the mountains and I'm remarried again and I'm having a great life, I had this overwhelming sadness hit me. And I was like, I have no right to be sad. What's going on? And then I got frustrated because I was sad and I couldn't figure it out. And I was walking down the street in my town and I literally stopped and I went, what's going on? And I heard this word, Robin, it's grief. And I'm like, grief? Nobody died, And this was just a few years ago. And so this is where it really came that those invisible losses we have cause the symptoms of grief, anger, frustration, sadness, and sorrow. And you know what it was that was causing it? I had moved away from a place that I had lived for 17 years, longer than I'd lived anywhere other than the home I grew up in. Now, I didn't want to stay in this place the rest of my life, and I knew I was going to move away. But what did I lose? I lost family or friends that seemed like family because I had lived there for so long. I lost my favorite coffee shop, my work environment, my favorite trails to walk on. It was change. Really, and change causes grief. Change causes loss. And
Yeah.
so, yes, when I work with clients, we really look at those changes that we've gone through and process any emotions that come up around that.
Yeah, I love that you talked about that. I know that it is a big part of your work and helping, especially the clients you work with, process the quieter losses, right? Like the identity shifts, the expectations that maybe didn't play out, the career changes that didn't go as planned. But I want to just take a follow-up question to that. Like, why is it so important to name and process the non-death losses? And what happens when we don't?
Very good question. Very good question. There's something called cumulative grief. Cumulative grief. And this is when we have losses that we don't recognize and they pile up on each other and we don't work through them. Grief and loss, those emotions can manifest in our body when we hold on to them and we don't cry or we don't write, we don't have some way to get them out. The losses is particularly for women when we go from being single to married, from being a wife to a mother. Those changes go unacknowledged, but they're losses because they're a change in identity for us. And when we don't take the time to go, okay, I am leaving this behind. What are my feelings around that? What are my emotions? And how am I going to take that, what I knew, what I previously lived, how can I take that and move that into my new path? I think that's the most important thing. We're looking at where we've been. We're not staying stuck there. We're seeing what's changed and then taking what we want from that and moving forward with it. We're processing all those emotions. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And when we have losses like that, that all gets caught in our body. The tension, the shoulders, those are the most obvious, right? Digestive issues. Grief and loss when it's not processed, no matter from where it comes from, it manifests physically. And so by doing that timeline events with the clients, there will be several that'll go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I really remembered that." There must be something there. And so we dig in to find out what is causing it to be still a memory, and that brings in what values people have and how they perceive life and what particular types of things happen at that time that make it so visceral now. So getting all of those emotions out and processing it, you're moving forward. You're not forgetting it, but you're moving forward using the things you want to use from it in your new
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, I love that. I want to shift it to you for a moment. So you have lived a life that, you've lived through that feeling of trying to measure up to everyone else's or someone else's idea of a good life, right? And you ultimately chose to walk away from a 30-year career. So from your perspective, and a lot of the time I bring in like what is the negative side to that, but I really want to actually look to the positive side of someone who's listening. She feels stuck in a version of life that doesn't feel like her own. What's the opportunity that comes with choosing yourself rather than just like, because I always talk about what's the cost of staying stuck, but rather I'd like to focus on like what is the actual opportunity that comes when you choose yourself?
Oh boy, the opportunity is to find peace, real peace that comes from your own heart when you connect with your own heart. We've got this heart and we've got this mind, and it's when they both meet that we are most in line with ourselves and who and what we've come here to do. When there's a discord because we're overthinking or we're using those expectations that everybody else has, for me, what happened was I would get so frustrated in the accounting world, and I didn't know why. I mean, I was good at it, and for a time I really liked it. And what I realized that the accounting world gave me structure that I didn't have when I was a child growing up in an alcoholic family with a disabled sister. And so that life that I lived served me well. And I think women who are in that environment where they want to make a shift, the first thing is to realize that that life did serve you. Okay. But if you're unhappy, you do not need to stay there. And the opportunity is to find happiness and to find peace. It's not easy, but it's worth it. It is so worth it because in becoming an end of life doula and working with people at the end of their lives and even doing research, you could ask, the internet this. The biggest thing that people regret on their deathbed is not doing the things that they wanted to do. And
Mhm.
that's the opportunity. And there's no wrong time to start that process to become who you're supposed to be. You can do it in your 30s, you can do it in your 60s, you can do it in your 80s. The point is to get doing it and find those little joys along the way. Gratitude has a huge part to play in making life changes. That is probably the second biggest lesson, other than finding that peace, is that gratitude will help you make those changes. Because when you can be grateful for where you are and where you've been, there is a momentum that's gained when you make changes because change is hard and it's not easy, but finding gratitude in that moment for doing those things, being the person who has to change, doing it yourself, when you can find gratitude, it's like a snowball effect. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it will get easier and easier. And eventually you'll find yourself in the place where you want to be.
Yeah, I love that. I truly believe in gratitude. I feel like when you start focusing on everything that you have, even the smallest of things, like
Mhm.
just having like lately, I've been sleeping so well. And so having a gratitude practice around having a great night's rest, because that sets me up for my day. Just that little thing we might take for granted. Oh, like, yeah, I go to sleep. Yeah, I woke up great today, but not actually taking time to be grateful for that, I think is gratitude is really important. It can go a long way. So I love that you brought gratitude into, because for me, I think gratitude is huge and it's played a major part in my life in the things that I focus on, and being okay that maybe some of the things didn't turn out the way I want, but being grateful that some of the things that I thought I wanted didn't happen, because that opened me up to something actually better that came along
Mhm.
afterwards, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So one of the things I talk a lot about is time and energy and how they go together. Because I truly believe that how we use our energy is our energy, especially getting a good night's rest, the things that we eat to fuel our bodies, that our energy really affects how we use our time. And even if you have time in your day to add something else, if your energy isn't there to support it, it's like wasting that hour or that whatever that time slot is. So I feel it's not just the time and energy piece all the time, though, because sometimes the real scarcity is that emotional bandwidth. So,
Mhm.
with your clients, the women that you work with, how do you help them create the space mentally and emotionally to actually hear what they want so that they can move towards that?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes. I would say at least half of my coaching when you enter in a coaching agreement with me is a commitment to meditation. I am a certified meditation teacher and I started a daily practice in 2016. And it only takes 3 minutes a day, really, to start that. So I help women start that centering process of just sitting quiet and sitting still, setting an intention, learning how to set intentions. I came from a mom who said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so therefore I heard the message, well, why set them? Because I'm not, I grew up Catholic and that was just my upbringing. And so I had to really learn how to set an intention. And it's only been in the past few years that I've done that. So I help women do that. And those don't have to be huge things. It can be something as simple as I will I will sit for 3 minutes today and meditate, that's my intention, and then see what happens after that. So meditation and setting an intention. And the other thing is slowing down. We often think that slowing down is counterproductive. And in today's busy society where you have to have your checklists and you have to be on your technology and you have to do all of these things, sometimes when you get caught up in those lists and you don't know what to do, even though you have a list and you don't know what to do, the best thing is to just be and to sit and to center, because that's when you're going to tap into your intuition, tap into that voice that will nudge you to your next step, your next best thing. That's a hard thing to do, but in sessions we'll actually practice that, because that does take practice to stop and be still and to listen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. One of the questions I did want to ask you, because I think I don't really have this conversation enough, I think, with women, is this idea of being resilient. Because a lot of times, what I'm hearing as being resilient is, oh, I've been able to get so much done today. So it's the productivity piece over being and a performance rather than just like taking care of yourself. And in my opinion, when you just push through, all that does is it can push you into like a burnout phase that you might not even be recognizing, because most women don't even know that they're in burnout or don't even look at burnout as being the culprit. They just talk about symptoms as one-offs, not recognizing there could be patterns that are actually supporting why they feel tired. Like they might say, oh, I had a terrible night's sleep last night. And so that's why I'm like really cranky, super cranky today. I'm not focused. I'm not able to get things done the way I typically do. And forgetting that last night, just like maybe the last, 14 nights, because maybe they've been pushing through for 2 weeks, that they've been working late, into the late hours of the night and then trying to fall into bed to go to sleep. And their brain is still on, it's still working, and they're trying to get to sleep. And so they're trying to process what's in their brain at the same time as trying to shut it down and try to get that rest. And they wake up exhausted. And it might not have bothered them in the first couple of days, but over time, it's become a pattern that they just maybe not. I don't know if it's just they're not recognizing it because they're more focused on, like, I have a deadline, I got to get this done. This is stuff I just have no choice. I've heard that said before. So, from your perspective, because I know that you probably have a great answer for this, what does real resilience look like for you? And how can we build it in without defaulting to just push through?
Resilience to me is being able to return to yourself and to your own authenticity, taking that pause in the middle of all of those deadlines and going, okay, who am I trying to be right now? What's going on in my life? What's working and what's not working? How am I showing up with my heart? And it comes back to that heart head alignment. Those lists and those to dos all come from our head and those outside external forces. But real resilience is being able to return to ourselves and know that we are living our path to the best of our ability and with authenticity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that is just as simple as that, but we make it so hard because,
Yeah.
again, we live in such a high, fast paced world. We're now all connected through the internet now because, my generation growing up for part of my life, there was no internet. So the connection piece came from actually being outside as a kid, going out and playing with my friends, and then having connections, going to someone's house and spending time with them. And now you don't even have to leave your home. You can FaceTime them on your phone or your computer. So I really feel like coming back to yourself and being okay with that life doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be wrapped up in this pretty little package. And that, again, resilience isn't about pushing harder and working harder and thinking that's what success gets you when you do all of, like, that's the cost of success, and it shouldn't be. I feel like you were saying, taking those pauses, coming back to the mind heart connection, and really understanding that resilience is when you can just get back to being who you are without trying to push to the point where you lose yourself or you burn out and you start to maybe dislike what you do, because that has happened. And I mean, I've been through burnout multiple times. So I'm speaking from experience when I can say that it's not a fun place to be. It doesn't just happen overnight that you can walk away and say, oh, it was only, I'm burned out. And then 24 hours later, I feel great. It doesn't work like that, because once you get into that burnout, full on burnout, whether it's like you're right in it deep or you started that burnout phase, it takes time to get out of. So yeah, thanks so much for that. So I have a final question for you.
Mhm.
For the woman who's listening, she's standing at her own crossroads. Maybe she's grieving a dream that didn't come true or realizing that she's outgrown the version of the life that she built. What would you want her to know about what's possible when she chooses herself and decides to redefine what success looks like from the inside out?
Oh, I love that question. I love that question. Yeah, when you're standing at the crossroads, and I know particularly in my situation and people I worked with, you feel like you're out of control and you don't know what's going to come next. The truth is, you do have control of your next step. And one of the key things is to let go of how you think things are supposed to happen. Set a dream, take incremental steps, and enjoy the journey along the way. We've talked about how change is hard and that how there's loss in that change. And again, bringing gratitude in. It's a combination of having gratitude for where you are in this moment, how you got here, and knowing that you have the power to choose. And control keeps coming to mind, but you only control the responses to what's going on.
Mhm.
And it's through those mindful responses of setting your dreams and doing incremental steps to get there, that you can make positive change in your life. And as I said, you're never too old to do that. If you're at a crossroads, the one thing I would recommend doing is really sitting down, taking the time, closing your eyes, breathing, and allow anything that comes to you in terms of what to do next. Who am I? What am I going to do next? Where am I supposed to go? Just let that flow through you. Don't force it. Don't try to grab it. Let it come to you and write it down. Put it aside and then come back to it later. Because when you start to let that process happen, you're sitting in just being you, just being yourself. You will receive those messages and then you can take them and do things, talk to a coach, create a vision board. I'm a big vision board person. You can start to put tangible things out there of what you want in the future. You see them, you look at them, you write them down, and then you create those steps to get there without putting undue expectations and burden on yourself, because you've done that before and that doesn't work, right? Certainly you have to have that drive to continue going when things get tough. But the expectations that we put on ourselves, we don't need those. And that's one thing we can let go of when we're at a crossroads and we're trying to change directions. So really it comes down to sitting down, centering yourself, and allowing what's supposed to come to you, those messages, those words, those are real things and they're something to take notice of and then use them to go forward.
Yeah, I love that. And for me, it's like I always believe that there is no real destination. I feel like our destination is in the journey, and the journey is never ending. And is if you're open to the possibilities, like to the possible, and that's where I think gratitude can really play a big part, because you start being grateful for the things that are happening to you in your life or the things that you have, and that opens you up to more. And then I just feel like there's just this whole ripple effect. So yeah. Robin, thank you very much for spending time with me today. I love your story, your perspective, the way you've turned your experience through your life into a message of strength and purpose for the people that you work with and for our audience who's listening today. I've really appreciated hearing how you navigated loss and how the idea of the non-death loss and how to look at that perspective, how you've made the bold pivots in your life, and you've built a life, I believe, that truly reflects who you are. And I also believe too, when you do that, and it's what I'm getting from you, that you're living a life that you love. So I'm really excited for the women who are listening today, because I know that for every woman who's listening, she might be wondering if it's possible to do life differently. And your story is a testament to that it is possible. So thanks again for being here with me and sharing.
Oh, thank you so much, Leslie. Yes, if that's the one message that people take away, is that you can make bold changes in your life, even though it's scary, and you can live the life on purpose of your dreams that you want. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And again, for having me today. I've enjoyed chatting with you.
I've really deeply enjoyed our conversation as well. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Robin directly and learn more about her work, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, sometimes it's the hardest moments that wake us up to what we truly want, and choosing to honor that can be the most powerful step towards freedom, clarity, and self-trust. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to choose yourself one honest step at a time. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Ever thought about starting your own podcast?
Do you have a business or a message you want to share with the world?
Well, now it's easier than ever with Electricast. Hi, I'm Mark Netter.
And I'm Peter Rafelson. We're the founders of Electricast Media.
Whether you want to start a new podcast or already have one, join Electricast to grow your audience, monetize your content, and build your community.
With our simple sign-up, you get free promotion, world-class analytics, premium ads, and personal support.
Go to electricast.com and join our community today.
Electricast. Transform your influence.
Electricast. I'm Iris, host of Or Whatever Movies and the forthcoming Powers of Darkness podcast. For the better part of a decade, we've been unraveling a literary mystery that begins with a strange version of Dracula. Yes, that Dracula. It's a different story, imbued with a potentially insidious agenda. What we've already found so far reshapes what we thought we knew, but the investigation isn't over. Support our efforts to finish what we've started and bring the full story to light. Go now to Kickstarter.com and search up Powers of Darkness to learn more. Coming soon on Electricast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Electricast. Electricast.